Hello and welcome to the jungle. This is our weekly dive into all things Cincinnati Bengals, where I'd love to talk about Matt McClain right now, Owen Timmerding, but that's not the show. This is not the show for that. We're not talking Elliot of the Cruz or Matt McClain right now. Welcome, man. How are things going over in Oxford in the frozen tundra?
Cold. I keep
Yeah.
thinking the snow's going away, and then it snows again, and then I have to walk in ice, and the city's doing a great job of taking care of the public sidewalks. Sarcasm. It's been terrible. But hey, nothing like some snow days up in college, Seth.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was at Ohio State, they used to brag that they never canceled.
Yeah.
And I think we had a situation my junior or senior year where they did have to cancel. And it was like,
Mhm.
oh, wait a minute. You haven't canceled since 1969. I thought that was the thing here. But no, so yeah, if you live in the north like we do here in Ohio, it's been a rough couple days or weeks
Mhm.
or months. And we're going to hopefully get out of it pretty soon. We wanted to check in with you folks today because while things aren't up and running quite yet as far as free agency and all that, we do want to talk a little bit about a report from James Rapine that says that the Bengals intend to and will tag Tee Higgins for a second consecutive year. And we'll get into what that kind of means to us as far as what we think. But Owen, if you had told me a year ago, after the way T and more specifically his agent at the time reacted to the first tag, I would have said they will never do this again to him.
Mhm.
Um, I think the key as we discuss it, and I want to hear your thoughts. It's got to be a little more of don't think they did this to you if you're T Higgins. While obviously he'd rather have all 30 teams vying for his services and upping the ante as far as what they're willing to offer. If he would look backwards to last year, where was it 13 players were tagged, I believe, or something like that, and he was the only one who did not sign a long-term deal. So, what are your thoughts on that? As far as like, how do you think T receives the news that they're going to tag him?
I kind of feel like we would have heard something by now. I think the Bengals and T have actually had a lot of positive dialogue. I mean, again, this is all just kind of me not making stuff up, but just kind of thinking out loud. I feel like we heard a lot more last year about his frustrations with the contract. And I kind of like what you say is that this is helping the Bengals. And I also think it's kind of helping Higgins because I don't really, we've talked about this. I think me and you are both on the same page that he doesn't want to leave Cincinnati because
Mm-hmm.
it's a perfect site for him to kind of thrive and be a great NFL player. Whether he thinks the tag is insulting or not, it's kind of up to him to decide. But I mean, $26 million is pretty good, I'd say, for a number two receiver. And the Bengals didn't really seem like they wanted to extend him last year. And we've kind of taken a complete 180 on that stance, I feel like.
I also think if you look at it, the public comments by Joe Burrow back
Hmm.
after the Monday night game against the Cowboys, combined with T saying the things he said and doing the things he did, switching agents. He and Jamar Chase are rep by the same agent now. I think that all leads you to believe that, hey, yeah, we want something to get done, but using the tag just delays, not delays. Okay. It actually gives more time to talk.
Yeah.
And so, as far as that's concerned, I think that's definitely a good thing because as you look at it, if he wants to stay in Cincinnati and the Bengals want him there, then then going out in the open market might have helped his pocketbook a little bit. But at the same time, I don't know that it would help, further the cause of getting to stay in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think it helps the Bengals the most. And people see that he's on the tag and they think it's lazy and stuff like that. And to some extent it is, but this is like the tag allows the Bengals to kind of be flexible with this. And at the same time, the Bengals have to do what's best for them. And so does Higgins. But it just like I just the open comments, especially from Burrow, makes it seem like that we're going to get a deal. And then that report that came out over Super Bowl week that there's a growing sense around the league that Tee Higgins wants to be here and that he expects to be here. And he didn't hear that kind of stuff last year. He was even kind of on record being kind of wishy-washy because I don't think he was happy about how the extensions went. So something has changed from December to now. And I think the biggest thing, and you talked about it, is the switching of the agents.
Mhm.
Obviously, T wasn't happy with how the negotiations went on over the last summer. And if he switched agents, part of me wants to believe that that was kind of frustration from T with his camp. So
Yeah.
the Bengals, we know how they operate with these extensions and stuff like that. I'm sure they didn't put their best foot forward, but T. Higgins could have sat out last year. He could still sit out this year and kind of played this game where he's kind of being like the tag thing where he's just holding out. It just doesn't seem like that is the avenue he wants to go. And I think it's telling that he switched his agents to be on the same page as Jamar Chase.
Well, and to be fair, he came into camp way earlier than he quote unquote had to, given that he was on the tag. Um, and this is stuff we don't know T. Higgins personally. We know what's been reported and things like that, but as a longtime NFL fan, as I tried to familiarize myself with things, certainly in year two, if you're tagged, you get more. So you mentioned
Mhm.
26 million. That's up from what he got last year. If you're tagged a second time, it increases. But the other side of it is, it's easy to just say, hey, again, taking a more 30,000-foot view of not knowing T himself, your agent works for you. And sometimes people forget that. I've seen it even in college basketball with players that transfer, and you hear in the back channels that they actually didn't want to leave, and the competing bid wasn't even that much more, and yet they still had to go because the agent told them to. And it's like, no, you are the boss. And
Mhm.
so I could just see, and it's what kind of Trey Hendrickson got sucked into last spring when he kind of demanded a trade or an extension when he still had 2 years left on his deal. And you think about it, and you're like, you're listening to your agent here. It seems so obvious. Now we could argue whether the Bengals needed to do more as far as giving, being willing to renegotiate and all these sorts of things. The Bengals do things the way they do, but I'm encouraged. I think a deal can get worked out. The question will be the timeline. The tag period started yesterday, February 18th. It goes through March 4th. Last year, they tagged them immediately. So
Mhm.
that's pretty interesting, too. So they could be in negotiations even before they have
Yeah.
to tag them. And it could be that this got leaked so that they could hurry negotiations with T's agent. You know what I mean? Like maybe T is so averse to being under a tag again and taking that chance that they want to work something out before March 4th. But we'll see how that works. The question will be who gets their money first as far as long term
Mhm.
go. Will it be T? Will it be Jamar? Will it be Hendrickson? And if you believe certain people, they have enough under the cap to do all three and
Yeah.
even to go have a good, healthy free agent signing class. If you believe what other people say about the Bengals and the way they do business, there's no way they're going to do all three. So I don't
It
know. I guess what are your thoughts? What do you expect?
it's just the frustrating part that I'm kind of tired of these national media talking heads being like that the Bengals don't want to do this. They obviously want to keep all three. And the Bengals, I think, have finally realized because they've never had this public pressure, probably in the history of the franchise, to make these types of moves. And we've talked about one of the best follows on Twitter is Joe Goodberry.
Mhm.
And he made a comment. I was going through Twitter a week ago or whatever, and he had a chart, and it was the Bengals owe the least amount of money for players non-QB in the entire league. And his claim was they're paying Burrow currently right now, and that's it. And everyone else is on these team friendly rookie deals. So, and his point was basically the Bengals can sign Chase to the extension, Higgins to the extension, Henderson to the extension, and then still go out and get a piece or two. So, I think the notion that the Bengals are cheap is fair. And we talked about them, whether or not they're cheap or whatever last week. But at the same time, it just makes too much sense at this point in the Bengals franchise history for them to kind of slump over on this. We made the argument this is the best core group of guys they've had in 25 years. I mean, I like talking about that 2015 team, but this team offensively and just top to bottom talent is so much better. So I just think it's frustrating. The Bengals have this, and just the people who aren't fans don't really see it that way.
Yeah, it's low hanging fruit for the national people that just seem to. It's like on cue year after year. Um, my only question would be, could you do this? I think you could. Um, we'll never know the cash on hand scenario that we spoke about last week as well, because any of that guaranteed money has to be on hand, no matter when it's set to be paid out. And I just think it's a lot easier for make your list here: Eagles, Rams, even
Mhm.
Patriots, still Cowboys. Make the list of those teams, and the Cowboys actually operate more like the Bengals than they probably should with the revenue they have.
Yeah,
So it's easier for some of those teams to just give out these deals because they can just pay the money up front. And I don't know that the Bengals have the money up front. I don't know their situation exactly. There's people who say they do, but we'll see. And I guess I just hope the tag has been around for years and years and years. I mean, Carl Pickens I think was tagged
mhm.
by the Bengals at one point, and every year the players complain about it. And listen, I'll be player friendly on this. It's not you can't just say, well, if you don't like it, negotiate it out of there. Well, that's true. They could in the next collective bargaining agreement, but the problem is they don't have a. It's a give and take situation, so they don't always have something that they're willing to give up, and that usually means money, right, or a
Mhm.
percentage of money that the owners have to give the players. So it's kind of something that the owners hold over their heads. But at the same time, to your point, I don't know, 23 million one year, 26 million the next year. Kirk Cousins made a lot of money off of Washington
Yeah.
by being tagged, I think, 3 times.
Yeah,
So
that was crazy.
it is
But
insane in that way, but it's just amazing. Now, if Kirk Cousins got catastrophically injured in year one under the tag, the argument against it for the players would be completely revealed. Like, oh yeah,
mhm.
that's not good because as we've seen it, Kirk Cousins ended up making like $60 million over 3 years on that tag on a year-to-year basis instead of a long-term deal. But I don't know. We'll see. And the other thing to keep in mind is Tee Higgins hasn't played a full season, I don't think yet.
Totally. He's not.
So the problem being if he does hit free agency and he does get wide receiver one money, that would be interesting to me. And he's not going to get Justin Jefferson money, but he'd get somewhere close to that, and probably between 30 and 39 million a year.
Yeah.
And here's a guy that averages probably 11 or 12 games a year.
Yeah.
So
It's just interesting thought process too in this is that so much of these contract talks we are been chatting about are under the assumption that the Bengals are going to make a bunch of cuts
mhm.
too. So there's also this world where that doesn't happen and then the Bengals kind of screw themselves in a way where they need I don't it just like we talked about this ad nauseum about getting rid of the Rankins deal and the Hubbard deal. Both are just massive overpays right now and Kappa, but it's just funny. I just thought of that. How yes, we talk about how these extensions are going to work, but they get that cash back up front if they make these cuts. And that is
Yeah.
just so essential to how this works.
Well, and that's the Bengals haven't always done that either. They don't always cut guys as quickly as
Yeah.
you think they would because they could get out from under a lot. You're right, Rankins and Geno Stone
Yeah.
specifically. I would tend to think Hubbard would be more of a restructure type candidate,
Mhm.
because he's not really going to play anywhere else, I don't think. And the Bengals would probably like to have him around as one of the pillars of the organization these last several years. So we just want to come at you with a little bit of Tee Higgins news. It's going to be a little shorter this week, but if T gets tagged or if there's any big news out there, we'll certainly come and talk about it. And Owen, I appreciate your time. And how many classes you have left today?
2 more.
2 more. All right, you can do this. You've got this. Just wear layers, okay? I don't want you
I
to get
will.
frostbite or anything like that. So, all right. Hey, welcome to the Jungle Crowd. Thank you so much for tuning in again. Send your thoughts to, if you're on the Patreon group, to our Slack channel, and we'll be reading those. And maybe, as we mentioned, and that's just bad on my part, I'd love to start a viewer mail segment on here as well. So for Owen Timmerding, I am Seth Shaner. Thanks for tuning in. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, send us a review on Apple Podcasts, and Hoo day, and we'll talk to you soon.